How long do you intend to put up with that Kash Patel character? Are you good with his airplane jaunts? Are you confident he's not drinking on the job? Are you sure none of his travel is a pretext for vacation activities like snorkeling, Olympics, and visiting girlfriends? Are you sure he knows what he's doing? Do you vouch for him? Are you willing to look at whether he lied to this committee?
A Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room, July 15th, 2026, a senator is asking the Deputy Attorney General of the United States to account for the FBI director. The man he is asking about is not in this room, and the reason he is not here matters more than anything said inside it.
Are you willing to look at whether he lied to this committee?
Somewhere in this building, a document exists, not the ones on that table, not the ones in those binders, a different document, one that went where it was not supposed to go. Finding who sent it is the reason Kash Patel canceled his weekend. It is the reason phones were collected inside the White House. It is the reason a war room was built. And it is the reason the man who built it is not sitting in front of the Senate today.
Are you willing to look at whether he lied to this committee?
The senator with those papers is Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He came in with a documented list and one very specific question about the man running that war room. The man across from him is Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General, former personal defense attorney for Donald Trump. His job today is to answer for an FBI director he did not hire but now defends. The conflict comes down to one thing. Whitehouse has a list, Blanche has 2 words, and the gap between them is what this video is about. Here is what the record shows as of this week. A security breach. Someone inside the White House passed sensitive details to the New York Times about the Boeing 747 gifted by Qatar, the plane intended to carry the President of the United States. The leak describes security vulnerabilities in that aircraft. The Department of Justice responded with subpoenas to journalists. That is documented. What happened next inside the White House is also documented. Senior officials were asked to surrender their personal phones. Some of them refused. No consequence for those refusals has appeared in any public record. Kash Patel canceled a private trip to Chicago. He returned to Washington and sat down with Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. Multiple sources described what followed as a war room. President Trump personally called Patel about the leak. That call happened. This is the man Senator Whitehouse was asking about, and the Deputy Attorney General had just been asked to vouch for him.
That's an extraordinarily obnoxious question, Senator, and I have full faith in Director Patel and the work that he's doing every day.
Full faith. Those are 2 words. They carry a lot of weight, and they answered exactly none of what Whitehouse asked. Whitehouse asked 6 specific questions. He asked about airplane use, about travel as pretext, about whether Blanche was willing to examine a potential lie to Congress. Blanche answered none of them. He described the tone of the question and vouched for the man. You get to own that, Whitehouse said, and he moved on. Notice what was not said. No denial of the airplane trips, no denial of the jet usage pattern, no examination of whether Patel lied, a character reference delivered with irritation in place of an answer.
You have refused to exclude January 6 rioters from your anti-weaponization fund. You have refused to put in writing that the slush fund is dead. Indeed, you signal to allies that payouts are still on track. You have vacated seditious conspiracy convictions against members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. You hired January 6 rioter Jared Wise, who had urged the mob to kill police officers. You scrubbed press releases about January 6 prosecutions and called the releases partisan propaganda. You denied that Trump encouraged any violence on January 6. You've cleaned house of every attorney who worked on a case related to Trump.
These are not allegations from an anonymous source. They were read into the record by a sitting United States senator in public under his name. This is not our interpretation. This is from his own sworn entry into the permanent Senate record. The response to all of it came with a raised finger.
Said that any sort of violence against law enforcement is appropriate. I have never said that publicly. I have never said that in a speech, and I certainly do not believe it. I did not hire.
Absolutely false. Not some of it, not parts of it, almost everything. He defended what he said. He defended what he did. He did not address what Whitehouse said Kash Patel did. The scrubbed press releases, not addressed. The anti-weaponization fund, not addressed. The vacated seditious conspiracy convictions reframed as presidential authority, not disputed as fact. Constitutional authority is not the same thing as the action being appropriate. It means the action was legal. Those are different questions, and only one of them was asked. An unexpected detail lands right here, because Blanche said something else, and the logic of it reveals more than the denial.
When I talk about what happened with the convicted January 6 defendants, I talk about what President Trump did. He has the absolute right.
Read that carefully. He said he was not celebrating. He said it was a fact. But the claim was not that the pardons were illegal. The claim was that the Department of Justice publicly framed those pardons as bringing justice to violent rioters and called that a brag. The pardons may be constitutional. The framing of those pardons as justice is a choice. And the man who made that framing choice is now running an internal hunt inside the White House for someone who talked to the press about a security gap in the president's airplane. The FBI director is supposed to be independent enough to investigate anyone, including the people who hired him. That independence is the reason the position exists. It is why the director serves a 10-year term. What the documented record shows this week is a different picture. The chief of staff called. The FBI director came. He dropped personal travel to return to the White House at Susie Wiles's request and set up a joint operation inside the building he is supposed to investigate independently. Officials were then asked to hand over their phones to this same director's bureau. Some refused. The record does not show what happened to those officials after they refused.
You have refused to exclude January 6 rioters from your anti-weaponization fund. You have refused to put in writing that the slush fund is dead. Indeed, you signal to allies that payouts are still on track.
Almost everything the senator just said, and he's protected, he's allowed to lie, but almost everything he just said was absolutely false, okay? Starting with the fact that I have never.
He defended himself correctly, directly, and with conviction. But Senator Whitehouse was not only talking about him. The list Whitehouse read was not a list of things Todd Blanche said. It was a list of things the Department of Justice and the FBI did under his leadership on his watch. The Wisey allegation, Blanche disputed it directly and said that person was not hired. That is a denial on the record. What it is not is a personnel file, a DOJ statement, or supporting documentation of any kind. When a specific claim enters the Senate record and the response is absolutely false, followed by partial rebuttals, the viewer has a right to ask, which parts were not rebutted? The anti-weaponization fund language, not addressed. The signals to allies that payouts continued, not addressed. The press releases called partisan propaganda, not disputed. What he was getting at, Blanche addressed himself. The list addressed the institution. They are not the same defense.
So that the narrative that the senator just suggested and put on me as something I believe is absolute.
For a moment, that sounds like the defense is holding. Then go back to the one word Whitehouse used that Blanche never touched. Not false, not inappropriate, not unconstitutional, bragged. Senator Whitehouse did not say the pardons were wrong. He said the department bragged about them. He said the public framing, bringing justice for violent rioters, was a choice someone made, and that choice is now sitting next to the fact that the same leadership is hunting a White House leaker with subpoenas and phone collections. Those two things exist in the same week, under the same leadership, defended by the same two words, full faith. And the man those two words are defending is not in this room. He is in the White House, building a case against someone who told the press that the president's plane has a security problem. The man being vouched for also, according to testimony in a prior Senate hearing, used official FBI aircraft for personal travel and fired a 27-year veteran when the tail number was noticed. That is the same man now asking White House staff to produce their phones so he can find out who leaked. The Deputy Attorney General was asked today whether he was willing to examine whether that man lied to Congress. He called the question obnoxious. He said full faith. The viewer at home can hold those two facts side by side and form their own conclusion. The record does not ask for an opinion, it asks for a reading. At the beginning of this video, there was a room, a war room, and a question about what document started it all. Here is what the record now shows. The breach involved the Qatar plane, security details about a Boeing 747 that the President of the United States intends to fly on, Someone inside the White House described those vulnerabilities to a reporter, and the New York Times published them. Took the flight, spot the bathtub, ampersand DFBI high sends. The FBI director is now inside that same building with the chief of staff trying to find out who talked. With DOJ subpoenas going to the press, with phone collection requests that some officials refused, the document that matters in this story was never read aloud in that hearing room. It is the one that was leaked, the one that set all of this in motion. And whatever it said about the plane's security, it has not been made public. Senator Whitehouse said the department bragged about bringing justice for violent rioters. The record shows those convictions were vacated, those sentences were commuted, and those press releases were scrubbed. The Deputy Attorney General said almost everything was absolutely false, then addressed what he said and what he did. He did not address the pattern, he addressed himself. Those are different defenses, and only one of them answers the question that was actually asked. What the record reveals is not a verdict, not yet. It is something more durable, a question about who investigates the investigators, about whether the people asking that question in public get real answers or character references. What would you have asked that was not asked? Leave it below.